Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has announced what he calls the third and final arrow of his economic policy, his growth strategy. He presented his draft growth plan to a panel on industrial competitiveness this evening. Earlier today, Abe outlined his strategy in a speech. He said the explosive vitality of the private sector will be the engine for growth. Market players were all ears on what Abe had to say. Abe reminds his audience that Japan became the first country to win a ticket to next year's World Cup finals the day before. He says Japan must also become the center of the universe. Abe has previously outlined his monetary and fiscal policies. This afternoon, he unveiled his third and final strategy to achieve growth. Market players had been waiting for the Prime Minister's third arrow. How did they respond? This is the Tokyo subsidiary of a major foreign-based securities firm. Yesterday, people at the subsidiary said their clients had high expectations for Abe's growth strategy, and Japanese shares were beginning to be bought back. This person says he got the major sentiment among players that it's time to buy back Japanese shares. Another asks, what is the key priority for Abe's strategy? This person suggests the establishment of special strategic regional zones. Another says that's a given. This person asks if reforms of the labor market will be announced tomorrow. Another says if so, the market will respond greatly. The team agreed that the market will engage in a buying spree if Abe's policies include corporate tax breaks and employment reforms. The head of the team says if the Prime Minister shows his determination and eagerness in actions, not just words, investors will begin to buy back Japanese shares.
Abe took to the podium this afternoon. The Prime Minister says the vitality of the private sector will be the engine for Abenomics. What were the strategies he outlined? One is to scrap the ban on online sales of over-the-counter drugs, and the scope of advanced treatment covered by public insurance will be expanded. Abe says he will establish strategic urban zones with dramatically relaxed regulations. Abe says when all the strategies are implemented, Japan's gross national income per capita will grow by 1.5 million yen in 10 years. The Prime Minister says it is time for everyone in Japan to display what he called explosive vitality. He says his third arrow for strategic growth has been revealed. Market players note that no notable buying spree is taking place. When Abe began his speech, they noted that share prices rose and the yen fell. They say the benchmark Nikkei index went up by 1.6% in the past 10 minutes. Immediately after Abe began his speech, share prices skyrocketed. However, then market players noted the prices are coming down. Immediately after Abe wrapped up his speech, share prices plummeted.
Roller coaster ride here today. Roller coaster ride.
The security firm was flooded with sell orders, which took over the buying spree. This person says investors were disappointed. They believed Abe would outline bolder policies. The selling momentum continued. The Nikkei index shed more than 500 points, marking the year's third largest decline. This player says investors don't want to hear anything vague. They want to hear a strong message that something must be done that corporate taxes and the labor market must be addressed. As long as the government shies away from getting things done, the market will stay sluggish. Players will not respond favorably to the Japanese market. Abe's speech was followed by a nosedive in the stock market. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga says the government will carry out what must be done steadily and speedily. By doing so, he says the market will pick up in the long run. A government panel on industrial competitiveness was convened in the evening. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe presented his draft growth strategies to the panel, including plans he revealed in his speech. Abe says the government is determined to push reforms to allow everyone to take up a challenge without fearing risks. President Yasuhiro Sato of Mizuho Financial Group says the plans are likely to have a strong impact on the world. He says the government clarified its policy of offering full support to private businesses, which is extremely encouraging. President Takeshi Inami of convenience store chain operator Lawson says the plan shows the government's determination to tackle Japan's problems. He says the growth strategies will live up to expectations at home and abroad.
In today's speech, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe presented the third round of growth strategies. The strategies are so extensive that they were announced in 3 separate speeches. The first round was revealed in April. The first package features plans to help women play more active roles in society. Abe said the government aims to end nursery school waiting lists by 2017. He urged businesses to give women 3 years of maternity leave so they can continue working. Abe also touched on deregulations. He said the government will drastically review regulations to help push regenerative medicine, including stem cell research, into practical use and create new markets. The second package of growth strategies were announced last month. The key phrase was winning in the world. Abe said he himself will pitch Japan's best technologies, medical innovations, and food culture to the world. He also pledged to merge farmland to make agriculture more competitive and boost exports of farm products. He says he will double income in the agriculture industry and farming villages. Mamoru Kikuchi heads an agricultural corporation in a region hit by the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. He says their farmland was devastated by the tsunami. He says merging small plots into large farms will improve efficiency and help them cut production costs. Kikuchi says he hopes the government will simplify procedures for merging small plots of farmland. That will make it easier for people to start farming businesses. The second package also referred to deregulations. The government plans to set up special rules to encourage companies to technologically innovate. It will also drastically review government regulations to encourage the building of hydrogen fueling stations. That will help the spread of fuel cell vehicles, dubbed the next generation eco-friendly car. JX Nippon Oil President Seiichi Ishiki says he hopes the government will develop a clear view about the nation's energy policy, deregulate and work with the industry to develop advanced technologies. The third round of strategies was announced today. Abe used the phrase, the explosive power of the private sector. Abe said deregulation comes first in his growth strategies. He said the government will, in principle, lift a ban on internet sales of over-the-counter drugs. The retail electricity business will also be liberalized, while power generation and transmission businesses will be separated. Abe said the government will designate special strategic zones to carry out drastic deregulations and lure technologies, people, and investment from all over the world. The draft growth strategies were compiled based on those three speeches. The government estimates that the strategies, if implemented, will increase income per capita by more than 1.5 million yen over the next 10 years. Let's hear what experts think.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says regulatory reform is the first and foremost in the growth strategies. Abe repeated the phrase as he discussed his growth strategies. Waseda University professor Masazumi Wakatabe says high expectations in deregulation, such as lifting the ban on online drug sales. He says it's a good idea to lift the ban. He says anyone should be able to enter the market, and regulatory reform that makes this possible is important. He says if Rakuten CEO Hiroshi Mikitani benefits from deregulation, other people will also. However, another expert disagrees. Shiga University Associate Professor Keita Shibayama says too much emphasis is given to deregulation and liberalization. He says the measures are based on neoliberalism. He says they can't always bring about income growth or narrow disparities, and will make it difficult to maintain economic stability. Experts have sharply different views on the trickle-down effect of Abenomics. The trickle-down theory is that if big businesses with high productivity make more money, everyone will be better off. The Abe administration says Japan's gross national income per capita can go up by 1.5 million yen in 10 years in a virtuous circle of growth. Shibayama says the idea is that some people make a lot of money and it trickles down to the rest of society. He says the United States began cutting taxes in the 1980s to enable the rich to make more money and spend more. However, he says that resulted in social disparities, with a small group of people becoming hugely wealthy. However, Wakatabe says it makes no sense to object to or criticize economic growth. He says the strong will get even stronger and the weak will become even weaker without growth. He says the weak get stronger from economic growth. He says the Prime Minister wants to break the negative image of reform created during the administration of Junichiro Koizumi and his Economy Minister Heizo Takenaka. He says if Abe wants to call for regulatory reform as the key element of his growth plan, he has to present more impressive measures. Experts have different views on the growth strategies. The draft plan will be discussed further for cabinet approval scheduled for June 14th.
In his speech today, Prime Minister Abe said that it was important not to think only about money games driven by short-term gains, but to focus on achieving sound growth in the real economy and to distribute the results to hard-working people. He said that, in effect, is Abenomics. The response from the market today was not quite what Abe hoped for, but markets, and above all, the people of Japan, are earnestly hoping for a true recovery in the real economy.